It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Brand Crafted Social Club. My name's Pat Miller. I own Small Step Solutions, as you can see. Yeah, thank you very much. I help business owners that are too busy to think, solve problems, make big decisions, and do hard things. Sounds really fancy, but really I like to talk to people and help them figure out their problems. And it's quite an honor. And it's also an honor to be a part of the Brand Crafted Social Club on Facebook. So thanks to you for being a member of that. If you're not a member, please join. So the idea for this event came from that group. How can we get together, and instead of just having another Facebook group, how can we get together and get to know one another, exchange ideas, try and learn, try and grow, try and make some more money? Tonight, we're talking about something very specific, and our panel, I am so excited for our panel tonight because they're just industry experts and geniuses in their own right. And they talk about turning your customers into a community. And the reason why that's important right now is that your customers hold a power in today's marketplace that they didn't have 20 years ago. Their passion for their product, their opinion about your service, and their contributions to your brand and your content is something that can make you or sadly break you in today's business world. So we gathered 3 experts together, and we're going to talk tonight about how they turned their customers into a community, why they did it, what happened to their business after they did it, and then of course what's most important to all of us, how can we get started? Because I'd like some of that, right? So let's welcome our panelists from your left to right. First of all, the owner of Authentic CX, Steve Piehl. Thank you. I've had the pleasure to work with Karen in the center, one of my favorite contacts in town, Karen Roelke, the Vice President of Marketing for Stars and Stripes Honor Flight. Tremendous organization, and congratulations on your latest flight. Was it this past Saturday, is that right?
It was the 6th.
The 6th, and it went great? It looked great online?
It was a great day.
Great day. Well, thank you for all that you do. And on the end, the owner of Badger CrossFit, Tyler Sullivan. So what's neat about this panel is any one of them, we could sit here and grill about building customers into a community for an hour. Easy. And they've all done it in their own way. But tonight we're going to go a little bit faster than that, and I encourage you after the event to talk with some of them to get some more information because they've all done special things. So why don't we start at the beginning. Could you introduce yourself, how you got to this point, and some of the communities that you've built so we all have a common reference point of the things that you've done. We'll start with you, Steve.
Sure. So I had, the first chapter of my career was 35 years at Harley-Davidson Motor Company. And during my time there, I had, relative to tonight, the opportunity to start 2 communities. One was called the Harley Owners Group, and we talk lots about that. And the other one was a community for another company that Harley-Davidson owned called Piehl Motorcycle. And different audience, different customer base, so we had to adapt the communities we built to those audiences.
Karen?
I am in my 6th year with Stars and Stripes Honor Flight. For those of you who don't know what we do, we fly World War II vets, Korean War veterans, Vietnam War veterans, and terminally ill vets of any conflict on a 1-day, all expenses paid trip to Washington, D.C. to not only visit their memorials, but to really get the thank you that they never got when they came home from the service. It's our honor to do it. We're a board of directors of 20, and we have an active volunteer corps of about 200, and we are all volunteer. We don't have any paid employees.
Tyler?
I'm Tyler Sullivan. I've owned Badger CrossFit for the last 8 years. We are Wisconsin's largest functional fitness and conditioning facility here in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin.
So thanks to all of you for coming tonight. So let's talk about the why, okay? Turning customers into a community. That sounds really fancy. Why do we want to do this? Let's start with Steve first. So when you were at Harley, it's one of the iconic brands on the planet, right? Why is the Harley Owners Group or some of the other groups that you built, why are they important even to a gigantic company like Harley?
Yeah, it comes up a lot, and even with my consulting clients that I work with now, it feels like everybody wants a community. But it really has to be a match to the business needs, and it has to be a match to what the customers want. And because you can't build a community of people who don't want to be part of a community. But there's different types of communities. You know, there's a community of informed customers where the really driver is help me understand more about whatever the product, the service, or the organization that is the business is involved in. Or it can be a social type community. You know, Pat, you've done a great job of creating this community. And I called it earlier today, this is a business model of the 21st century. And about bringing people together both digitally and in the real world to kind of share experiences and to unite in what they want to achieve. So it really comes down to business purpose, what's the importance of what's important for the customers, and then how do you create experiences or opportunities to connect people to each other and to the business that's driving it.
So Karen, with Stars and Stripes Honor Flight, I mean, your team has done such an amazing job making every donor, every volunteer feel like they're the one holding someone's hand as they see their memorial. How do you go about doing that? What are you thinking about as you're building that community?
Well, for us, it's incredibly important. We're hyper local, so we all live in this community, and we fly veterans from this community, and all of our donors come from this community. So really, for us, it's a key component to what we do. We need the entire community to help us execute our mission, not only financially, but through volunteers and through the general public helping us find and convince veterans to fly. So it's really crucial to what we do that the entire southeast Wisconsin area feels like a family to us.
There's so many uniting factors. You have
Correct.
Not only the respect that everyone has for people that served and the family ties of people that have people in their family that served, but then that local nature, because there are honor flight groups all over the country. But you're leading the one that's in this corner of the world, so there's all of these extra ways. How important is local to your messaging?
It's incredibly important, and we're really fortunate to have such a local focus. You know, most people in southeastern Wisconsin know somebody several degrees away or closer that's taken an honor flight or who has served. And if they haven't taken an honor flight but they've served, there's some acknowledgement of the fact that really the appreciation maybe hasn't been there for one of those oldest veterans. So community is everything to us, and when we take our guardians through our guardian training session the week before a flight, we end it by saying, you're now part of the Stars and Stripes Honor Flight family. We need your help to go out in the community and not only spread the word about our mission, but encourage vets to fly.
One of the cool things about the diversity of the panel is we've got someone that's got a long background in corporate America, someone that's doing cause-related marketing, and then Tyler, he makes people sweat and be in pain for a living, which is really fantastic. I can personally attest to that. Thank you for all that you do to me.
You're welcome.
It's fantastic. But what's neat about CrossFit is it has a tribe unto itself, yet the Badger CrossFit family is a tribe inside the tribe. So can you talk a little bit about how you make the people that come through your gym fans of the Badger brand while doing CrossFit rather than CrossFit people who just happen to go to your place? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you go about doing that, making them Badger loyalists?
We like to try, I like to try and create a place where these people can actually have that third space for themselves. We want that to be at a location where we have the work, we have the home, and then they have this place that they can come to and kind of outlet themselves a little bit, more so than any other place, rather than just being kind of a transactional thing. So we like to get ourselves into a position where we can create this community that creates that space inside, or inside their lives, so that it gives them an opportunity to succeed and flourish everywhere else.
But as a member of your community, you're not talking about, oftentimes, not necessarily the sport of CrossFit. You're uniting people that have an interest around it. So you've said before that you really can't force it. So what are some of the uniting factors inside your Badger CrossFit community that maybe someone who doesn't know anything about what your community does, we talk about this, we talk about this. What are some of those items that you talk about?
Well, we try to get them to understand just in general, like, first off, this is a place that is welcoming for everybody, right? We're not going to force this fitness. This is your fitness, right? This is something that we're delivering for you. And we want that to be a comfortable thing for them and to be able to obviously engage with us. So it's important for us to have that interaction where they feel welcomed. They have that first step where, your hand's held for a little while so they can actually feel comfortable going forward.
Yeah. So when we're talking to the communities, and Steve, we'll go back to you. So Harley, again, being a large company, the Harley Owners Group doesn't sound like a large company talking to people that bought a motorcycle. It's very personal. How do you strategically go about having your communities have a voice, having your communities speak like a person would? What is that planning process like?
Excuse me, you just hit on something that's really important, and it falls into one of my pet peeve areas, because we all want to interact with people, but we don't necessarily want to interact with a corporation. So part of what we had to do, as in starting the Harley Owners Group, for example, was we had to create a personality and a face of the motor company to a pretty large group of people. I mean, our Harley Owners Group was a million people, and so you can't. One of my pet peeves is when you get a letter from an organization and it's like, we really care about you. We want you to be one of our best customers, signed by the corporation. And it's like, you need to attach a person, a name to it. And so so we made sure that we used the people who worked in the Harley Owners Group, the staff. We used Harley-Davidson leadership. And we used anybody connected with the brand to be physically the face of Harley-Davidson through the Harley Owners Group. So the welcome letter is signed by the president of Harley-Davidson. When you go to an event or a social activity, the people who are from Harley-Davidson or the Harley Owners Group are wearing name badges, and the key is to put that face on it. I can't take any credit for this, but Harley-Davidson has recently done something on Instagram, and it's to fight that the being a big corporation. And there's an Instagram page for humans of Harley-Davidson, and it's great stories about Harley-Davidson staff, and their riding experience, their experience as an employee, or their life experience, and it's a combination of great photos and great stories that makes Harley-Davidson more personal to anybody who wants to connect that way. And I think that's a great lesson, whether it's Instagram, whether it's a digital connection, or an email connection, or a personal connection. It's about people connecting with people. That's what drives community.
So we can have a takeaway from this. Say we've got an insurance agency, there's 20 people working there. When the email goes out, it should be signed by someone. You're saying to make it actionable, make it personal.
Signed, and a picture if you can, because I think about the great experiences I've had. Go to the home improvement show, and and there's a company you recognize the brand, you've heard their ads or seen their ads like that, but then you talk to somebody who happens to have that name up there, and you would never have thought of calling them, but you go, wow, that person was really smart and really helpful, and I know that person now because we talked for 5 minutes at the show. And when I'm buying carpet or roofing or whatever it might be, I'm going to call the person I know. So that's just, and those are little snippets that create a connection. A lot of times you don't even know you're creating, but they're critically important to connecting consumers to you and your brand.
I can imagine how hard that was in a company that size to get everyone to say, hey guys, this is what we're going to do. Like, I'm sure there were a lot of opinions in the room trying to weigh in on that.
It was easier in year 2.
So, after the success, right? Everybody, we know what we're doing.
And part of it comes with volume, but volume's relative, right? So the size of a community, for a small business, a community of 10 or 20 can be success. It doesn't have to be thousands. And an engaged community that's interacting with a brand is more likely to do recommendations, more likely to repurchase. I mean, Harley Owners Group, the demonstration on that is that one of the takeaways for Harley-Davidson was that people who are active hog members, there's a turnover time between people buying new motorcycles, and Harley Owners Group members bought new motorcycles a year sooner than non-Harley Owners Group members. So there's a definite dollar piece of it. They also bought more accessories, and they had a closer relationship with their dealer, their retailer. So there's all of those factors that weigh into it. but you have to prove your success. So in a large company, when you have that success, it's easier to get people on board, to say this is exactly what we should be doing.
So Karen, your success is, and I remember when we worked together before, you got through the World War II list, isn't that correct? You
Yep.
took them all. All
Yep.
of them went.
Yep, everybody, and we still get them occasionally.
Right. Unbelievable. You're talking about a charity. You wouldn't necessarily think about a mission statement. You wouldn't necessarily think about like a corporate philosophy, but that very much exists. So we were talking about how do you get everyone at Harley on the same page with everyone trying to get together to do good. How do you get everyone to do good this way? Like this is how we're going to go about it. How did you work that process?
A lot of strategic planning. We sit down every January and have a summit meeting where we make sure that our mission statement is updated, that we all have the same vision, and that everyone feels empowered to get us to that finish line for whatever our goal is for the year. And thankfully, we're fortunate that we're an all-volunteer organization, so anyone who's there wants to be there. However, everybody has different ideas about how to get there. And we find that it's incredibly important that we all have a unified vision, that we're all going, we're all paddling the same direction. And really, that's been crucial to our success. And our volunteers as well. And we actually did a survey of our 200 volunteers last year and found a surprising amount of misinformation, things that we didn't even know that they wanted to know. And so we've really made a concerted effort to share and empower them with information so that when they see things that maybe they don't understand at first, there's trust. They understand that they're a part of this shared mission, and they're now asking the questions and finding out why decisions were made so that everybody really can work together well.
We've talked about personalization, how important that is. Now we're talking about planning, and Badger does that too. You have a very purposeful content schedule and plan that you run through as far as this is when we're going to talk about this and this is when we're going to talk about that, don't you?
Yes, yeah. So we typically try to hit those three things that most customers come to us for in the perception of value at Badger. Obviously, they come for the training first off, right? And then there's that social interaction, and then the facility, the equipment, the things like that. And we purposely set up on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis where we can start to understand what things we need to do for our customers to ensure that that perception of value is actually met and we're having that, meet their needs. And those are through social events, of course, and of course purposeful training mechanisms that we perform, but also just in general, just keeping the place the way it needs to be, that customers feel like we're always improving for them.
But isn't that one of the last things we all want to do? Seriously. Hey, I know what I want to do. Let's sit down and get the calendar out.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody wants to do that. But you're all saying that's one of the major food groups if you want this to happen. You would agree with that. It's got to happen.
Constant self-improvement. And the only way that you can stay on top of what you're doing is to constantly self-evaluate and change for the better.
Okay. Let's talk about when you start to see success. So when, Karen, can you think of a time when things started to pop for you, this community was starting to rally together? Can you think of a specific time? Because I think all of us, as we're trying to build communities, we're looking for a flare, oh, this is starting to happen. I'm going in the right direction. And you've got a giant organization, but can you think of a time early on when you're like, okay, I think we're doing the right thing? Can you share something like that?
It would be hard to isolate one particular incident. When we started getting crowds at the airport for the homecoming, we realized that it was something the public wanted. People wanted to have a chance to give back to veterans in a major way because maybe they didn't have one in their life, maybe their veteran had passed, and it was an opportunity for people to come together in a family, in a community, and celebrate these veterans, even if they didn't know any of the veterans that were on the flight. So I think as our crowds started building, that was one way. A few years ago, 5, I guess, we entered into a partnership with Sendix through a blind email. We emailed their general mailbox and said, we see that you're doing a little fundraiser for the MAC Fund. Is there any chance? And it just happened that the retired chair, the patriarch of Sendix, had just been at a funeral for his best friend, and it was all honor flight. And we went in there, met with them, and the first year, I believe that $170,000 were donated at the registers.
That's awesome.
And so we knew, though, at that point that this was something that people were interested in and something people were rallying behind. So it's really been an honor to celebrate this community's veterans.
So we've seen like the welcome homes on the news. Has anyone been to one of those welcome home events? I have at the airport. It is, first of all, it's an unbelievable event. But the point I want to make is not all of those people have a veteran that's being brought through. What do you think the percentages of people that are there just to support the cause that aren't related to anybody that's parading through?
30 to 40%.
Are just showing up.
Yeah, and we generally get 3,000 to 5,000 people, so you can do the math.
Yeah, it
So
was crazy.
It's fun. It's great fun, and you know, it got to a point for a while when we had an airport director that wasn't as kind to us. He's since gone away.
Bye-bye.
But we had to actively discourage people from coming, which was breaking our hearts, honestly. We didn't want to do it at all. Now we're back in a great spot, but the people just keep coming, and word gets around, and we're thrilled with the crowds every time.
Yeah, it's an amazing experience. Tyler, when did you know that something was happening at Badger? Right after you opened, or how long did it take?
It was that first time I saw people actually gather outside of the gym and saying, "Wish you were here," kind of thing. And it was very purposeful that they got together outside and formed that, like, you know, whether it was a social event or they went to do a 5K run together or anything like that, it was at that moment I was like, wow, these, you know, it's more than just my physical facility, of course, and what I do, but it's just them getting together and doing that. And when I saw that for the first time, it was like, that was my checkbox.
One thing that you do that I think is really interesting is you celebrate people's success using your brand. And what I mean by that, if you've ever seen their Facebook feed, and if you haven't, that's fine, but you should look it up because it's great. But one thing that they do a really good job of is, hey, here's Lewis out using his fitness climbing rocks. Hey, here's someone running a 5K with their mom, and it's not about CrossFit. And I think that takes a lot of courage to celebrate those parallel tracks of what you do. So for example, if you were an insurance agency, you could be showing pictures of your clients' homes that have been remodeled, or just like the things that you protect, but it's not about insurance. Like it's similar kind of content. And I think that's really amazing, and it's totally on purpose,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. And I have a few of my awesome members here today.
Yes, you do.
We love to showcase what they do because they're our brand, ultimately. You know, they're the ones who show what we do, and they're the ones living it. And we want them, and we want to highlight them on purpose as a result of that. And it's one thing that it's just, again, testament to what they're doing, their hard work, of course, but their trust in us and our business. And by highlighting them is just that natural thing that we want to do because we appreciate what they do for us as well.
Yeah.
And you're creating a raving fan in the process.
100%. Yeah.
It's really cool. So Steve, for you, at the time that the Harley Owners Group went down, and I'm going to screw up the title, I'm going to try my best, in charge of customer experience for North America. Is that right? Is that what the position was?
So that was my second go around
Okay.
as the leader of the Harley Owners Group. So
Okay. So at some point, you had to talk to the biggest of the big wigs about how is this going? When did they notice that the Harley Owners Group was becoming a thing? Because you shared the sales cycle speeding up, and everyone knows that. But when did the people that maybe thought, oh, what are we doing here? When did they buy in because they saw something good happening?
Yeah, and it's easy to get, throw out there, you know, if I ever write a book, the first chapter is probably going to be all the things we did wrong. You know, because it's not easy to read your customers and to start a community that hits a home run right away. Because you have to learn, you have to test, you have to do things, and one of the challenges when we started the Harley Owners Group, year one, the goal was 60,000 members, and at the end of year one, we had 33,000 members. So it wasn't like we hit numbers immediately right away. But at the same time, that when you realize you have something and when you can share that with senior leaders who are making monetary decisions is, and two metrics. One is when the purpose of a piece of the organization is to bring customers together so that they can, I always said, boy, if you surround, from Harley Davidson, if we can surround a person who's already loyal to the product and loves their motorcycle, and surround that person with friendships of other people who love their motorcycle, then you take away the what am I going to buy next? Because you wouldn't consider buying anything other than a Harley when your life revolves around that. So in that piece of it, that was the part of the mission there was that social connecting people. And so the first is an observation that says, when you watch people who didn't know each other interacting, meeting, talking, sharing experiences. Then the second one that really will hit anybody hard is when those people come to you and say, thank you for doing this. Because that's been their experience. So they realize what the prompt was to get together to create those relationships. And when the organization is starting to receive thank yous for doing something, I think that's part of the metric. And even if your numbers are down, or you're not necessarily hitting all of your goals, when you realize you're having those personal victories, I think that's and because we used people all the time, we always brought people back to the company who had a personal experience themselves that could share that within the walls of the building. And so that will extend your victories even deeper.
Having three people that have built such diverse communities on stage, I thought it would be pretty much interviewer malpractice not to try and learn some of what they built. But we're all here to try and get better, make more money, build our communities. So I want to pivot a little bit to talk about, okay, I own a tax agency, or I own an insurance agency, I own a travel agency. How do I do it? So I want to spend a little bit of time asking some questions about what are some of the things that we can take away tonight, because your experience is incredible and what you've built is amazing. But let's start with you, Karen. So you talked about a clear and consistent brand voice being so important. So is that one of the key takeaways, that we all have to know who we are and what the voice is going to be once we start building the community?
I think it is. And I think, too, whether you have a handful of employees or are working alone, knowing what your customer wants is the important thing, and not what every customer wants, but what individual customers want.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Through relationship building. And just as an example, when we were getting ready to start flying Vietnam veterans, we did some focus groups with some groups of combat Vietnam vets, because we had a funny feeling that they would want a slightly different experience than the World War II and the Korean vets. And they told us the right questions to ask. They told us what the objections were going to be and what veterans were going to be scared of. And without taking that time to go and ask these questions, we would never have known. So I think, it's easy to fall into the trap of assuming that every customer wants the same thing, and relationship building is a lot of work, but boy, does it pay dividends if you can do it.
And I think let's put it in terms that I understand, because I don't get it all the time. So, and this is something this is your homework. Go on Facebook and look up Stars and Stripes Honor Flight, because they do a tremendous job. You described your social media feed as an island of goodness. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about creating a brand and what is our brand voice and what is our identity, that's the one you've chosen and that's the one you run with. And that goes into all your decision making. An island of goodness. That's genius.
Well, there's so much conflict and controversy out there. We try to be completely apolitical. We want to be somewhere that, in general, people are going to be moved in a positive way. So, we try to share and educate and move people. And if something is controversial or unpleasant, it's not going to find its way to our social media feed.
So a clear and distinct brand voice, that's important. Planning is important. We've talked about this. Personalization, it doesn't come from Harley.com, it comes from Steve. Tyler, you can't be everywhere. You have classes around the clock, right? So your product is being taught, well, it was taught a half hour ago, right? So how do you ensure that your community is getting what it needs every time it comes to the gym?
It's very important that we obviously hire the right type of person, and that really fulfills the vision and mission that we've set out as an organization. And it's important that every coach or employee that represents our service is in line with the values that we want to go forward, and they understand the vision of our organization. And it's a key thing for us to make sure that this person in this role, because no one knows that I own Badger CrossFit if I walk in and they're a brand new member, so they are Badger CrossFit, they're the brand, they represent what I stand for, and also how we deliver. And it's crucial to have the right key people in place that understand that vision, so we can proceed forward.
So it's who we hire, it's planning, it's personalization. So Steve, take us to the very beginning. Let's say we hired you, which we can do, and he's a genius, you should. So let's say we hired you to help us develop a community around our brand. Just in the most abstract sense, where would you start with interviewing someone of, okay, you have an insurance agency, how can we get off the ground? What are some of the initial questions that you would be asking that business owner?
Well, and like I said earlier, every organization thinks they want a community, but you really have to understand what it is that the organization wants to achieve through that, and then what are the consumer needs. And, the example I gave earlier is, I don't know that I want to join a social organization wrapped around the company that put in my new furnace, but I wouldn't mind being part of an informed group of consumers that know, geez, what's the right thing to do with changing filters? What are cautions to, if something happens to the furnace or air conditioning and things like that. So community doesn't have to be a social thing. It can be a group of informed consumers. It can be, it can be an online, never a personal connection, never something like this, but it can be a tremendously active resource online, and it can be, just plain social. Mm-hmm. And so those are, you need to dive in, and determine what the organization needs, what the consumers need, and then look at the menu of things that really drive connection between people. And again, it's not connection between an insurance product, it's connection between people, because the personality behind who I buy insurance from is what drives me to connect,
So the first thing, if I'm hearing you correctly, would be really understanding who the customer is and what they want out of it. So you would talk to us a lot about who's buying your stuff and what do they want out of life, what do they want out of your brand,
exactly,
and then building around that.
Exactly. I would not take the first step towards a community building email or website or Facebook page until I knew exactly what the goal was to achieve and truly felt like I understood the customer.
So you shared one of your goals, or at least one of the highlights of the health of the Harley Owners Group, that the sales cycle got shorter. So Karen, what are some of the goals that were accomplished with the Stars and Stripes Honor Flight? What were the results of having this healthy community? Can you share a few?
Sure. I mean, they're difficult to quantify, honestly. But we continue to get more and more applications. We continue to get for veterans to fly. We continue to get donations, and our corporate sponsor list is growing. So we feel, really on multiple fronts that it's bearing some fruit. But again, it's difficult for us to quantify. However, we ended, after flying 819 veterans last year, we ended up 5 different at the end of the year than when we started. So
wow.
didn't make enough progress last year.
Yeah.
So we're trying this year to fly quite a few more.
So Tyler, the community is healthy and you're getting these results. What are they?
Well, I just really want to touch back on something Steve said, and that was, he mentioned just if you're like an insurance or a chiropractic studio or a junk removal service, right? Like, you can create that community of raving fan, and it could be Google reviews, right? It could just be people that really love, when you make a comment on something via either social media or whatever. But everybody can actually have something in place that can make that more of a reality for the customer, and that can be done 30 days later, where you send you a thank you note for doing my service, and in that regard. So yeah. And I'm sorry, your question.
As far as Badger is concerned, you've got this healthy community. What are some of the results you've enjoyed from having the healthy community?
Just lifelong friendships. We're a very personal business, and my people that are here right now, I love, and just love to see them interact with each other and just grow. Like she said, a little bit hard to quantify in some regard, and we just know though that the health of the community is there's attendance numbers, of course, but how we're interacting on the outside of our facility is also a big indicator.
And I don't know who wants to field this, but is it better not to try and build a community than to build it badly? Would you say it's better to just not go there if you're not ready to try and build it, Karen?
I think so, and I would absolutely say that authenticity is the key. If you're people can spot a fake a mile away,
Yeah.
and it'll send everybody running the other direction. So if you're ready to authentically build a community, then it's time. Otherwise, maybe wait and assess a little bit longer.
Yeah, and Tyler just said some great words about creating raving fans. And in many cases, I think as a business, the progression probably should be, let's focus on creating raving fans, people that will stand up and yell our business's name to their friends. Let's start with that, because that's a matter of primarily what happens at the point of sale and what happens after the sale. And that we should all be able to control. So if you start with creating raving fans, then grow from there to community, I mean, that's a natural progression. And I think you mentioned that, and that made it click for me that, it doesn't have to start with, we're going to get a group together. It can start with, we're just going to kick ass when it comes to servicing our customers. And then when we feel the momentum is right, we can authentically go out and create a network of people that are together either online or in person.
Yep, and if you have employees, I would create the raving fans internally first, because they will draw outside customers in by their enthusiasm. If you've got, people that are not real sure what their focus is, if they don't feel empowered, if they're not on board with the vision, it's tough for them to get raving fans. So I would start internally first and then set them loose. I completely agree.
I want to make sure that we get some more advice and some things we can sink our teeth into because we're running out of time. So Tyler, we'll start with you. Can you give us a piece of advice, a nugget, something you did wrong, something you did right, something we haven't touched on yet when it comes to building a community or creating fans or getting people to love your business more than just the product?
I would say one of the first things that I did wrong was trying to force that in the opposite direction, right? Like creating that community before I had a really authentic, valuable service, right? So working kind of backwards. And, now that we've sort of understand in full circle here, it's, knowing that my service is strong, knowing that what we have works, that our, like she mentioned, internal organization truly believes what we're doing, and they're raving about us, is now the opportunity for us to create more raving fans and community.
Okay. Karen, can you share anything that you haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, I would just go back to authentic relationship building, whether you're, on your own, just selling by yourself, or you have 15 or 20 employees or more. Your relationships with your employees, everyone feeling valued, and your customers feeling valued by the time that you're willing to give them.
Okay. Steve?
I think, the first thing I mentioned before is don't be disappointed with challenges at the beginning, and understand and know that no matter how much you plan, the best documentation, the best goals, you're going to learn along the way that maybe those weren't right, and you're going to learn from your customers or the members of your community, and then adapt and change and meet their needs, and always figure out how they mesh with the business needs.
And I think that's one of the aha moments for me tonight, and I'm sure that you've had some as well. Really starting with the inside out and understanding what your community, what you're about as a business, and then listening to the needs of your consumers, finding out where those two things intersect, and then being very personal, or very purposeful rather, about planning and executing that and moving things forward. The good news is, for the low, low price of a beer, I'm sure they will tell you more about personal questions that you might have, because they're brilliant. So can we give them a round of applause? Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Fantastic. It's really great. So Jesse, we can do the beer thing, right? You can hook them up with the beer? Because for the low, low price of a beer, we'll get the, okay, great. So thanks again, Tyler Sullivan, Karen Roelke, and Steve Piehl from Authentic CX for being here tonight. We want to make sure that we continue the conversation. David McCoy, when he's done with the video, will post it, and we'll get some questions going on there as well. So it doesn't end now. So if you're on Facebook, join the Brand Crafted Facebook group, and we'll continue there. And we have prizes as well, and there's a lot of good stuff. So thank you guys for coming tonight. We're going to give away some prizes real quick, and then we'll get back to the Revelry and the Bucks game, which is tipped off, which is great. So again, A thank you to Local First, to the team at Westallion, David McCoy from Roamin Studios, also the Focus Fork, Abby, CL Content Marketing, and most of all, thanks to all of you, because as we're talking about here tonight, what we're trying to do is build a community when we're all interacting. So if you're a member of the Brand Crafted group, thank you for your contributions. It means everything. And we'll do this again. If there's something else you want to do, let's talk about what the next content is. We'll get more super smart people on stage. Give them a war round of applause. Drink a beer. Good night, and thank you.